Hello, and welcome to Lotus Light Teachings. Imagine this. You're walking in a beautiful, serene garden. The air is crisp, the flowers vibrant, and the sunlight gently warms your skin. But as you move closer to a seemingly inviting corner, you notice the shadows lengthening. Something feels off. You can't see anything threatening, yet an unexplainable unease fills you. What do? Trust your instincts and turn back, or ignore the signs and proceed? This metaphor reflects our encounters with people whose intentions may not align with goodness. Their actions may not always scream danger, but subtle clues often reveal their true nature. Today, we'll explore these hidden signs, like lanterns in a dark garden, to illuminate the paths we should take to protect our well-being. The weight of intuition. Your instincts are often the first to notice when something isn't right. Listen to them. The subtle signs. Behaviors like chronic lying, avoiding responsibility, and belittling others can erode your peace over time. Personal reflections. I'll share stories from my own life, where recognizing these signs transformed relationships and restored balance. Practical actions. Setting boundaries and prioritizing self-awareness are key steps in cultivating a life surrounded by positivity. Section 1. Recognizing toxic traits in people. In life, we are bound to encounter individuals whose behaviors disrupt our inner peace. They may not always be obvious, nor do they carry signs that scream danger. Yet their subtle actions and the energy they radiate can significantly impact our mental and emotional well-being. Through the lens of Buddhist philosophy, we can find clarity and compassion in identifying and responding to such individuals while preserving our sense of inner calm and balance. Pleasure in others' pain. Let me start by asking, have you ever noticed someone smile at another's misfortune? It could be a small smirk when someone stumbles, or outright laughter at someone's hardships. This type of behavior reflects a heart that has strayed far from compassion. In Buddhism, this absence of empathy is seen as a root cause of suffering, both for the individual exhibiting cruelty and those around them. The Buddha taught that our actions, words, and even thoughts generate karma, seeds sown in the soil of existence that eventually bear fruit. When someone delights in others' pain, they plant seeds of suffering in their own lives. Yet, instead of reacting with anger or resentment, what if we viewed such individuals through a lens of compassion? Perhaps their actions stem from deep personal pain or a desperate need for validation. I recall a story from the Dhammapada, a collection of Buddha's sayings. A man insulted the Buddha, hoping to provoke a reaction. Instead, the Buddha remained serene and said, "If someone offers you a gift, but you do not accept it, to whom does the gift belong?" The man, puzzled, answered, "It belongs to the one who offered it." The Buddha replied, "So too with your anger. I do not accept it, and it remains yours." In our modern world, imagine a coworker who mocks your mistakes during a meeting. Their laughter is like that unaccepted gift. Rather than internalizing their cruelty, you can detach from their negativity and maintain your peace. This approach doesn't mean condoning harmful behavior, but recognizing that their actions reflect their inner turmoil, not your worth. A need to control. Control often masquerades as care, making it harder to detect. A partner's constant check-ins might seem protective, but over time, they might become suffocating. Similarly, a boss who oversees every minor detail might claim dedication to quality, yet their micromanagement leaves you feeling disempowered. From a Buddhist perspective, the need to control stems from attachment, an inability to let go of desired outcomes. In the second noble truth, the Buddha explains that craving, tanha, is the origin of suffering. When individuals cling to control, they suffer from a fear of uncertainty and impermanence. By trying to dominate others, they attempt to shield themselves from the unpredictability of life. I once knew someone whose life revolved around control. She meticulously planned every aspect of her family's daily routines, from meals to conversations. Initially, her efforts seemed admirable, yet over time, her need for control led to constant arguments. The more she tried to dictate others' lives, the more distant they became. It was only when she began practicing mindfulness, observing her need for control without judgment, that she started to let go, allowing space for trust and genuine connection. For those dealing with controlling individuals, boundaries become crucial. But boundaries, in the Buddhist sense, are not walls of anger or resistance. Instead, they are expressions of self-respect and compassion. By calmly asserting your needs, you give others the opportunity to reflect on their actions. You may not change them, but you protect your autonomy and cultivate a sense of balance. Negative energy and strange instincts. Have you ever walked into a room and felt an inexplicable heaviness, as though the air itself resisted your presence? Or perhaps, after spending time with someone, you feel drained, like your inner light has dimmed. This isn't imagination. It's your intuition speaking, a quiet voice honed through experiences of connection and disconnection. In Buddhist philosophy, we often talk about energy or qi, the unseen currents that flow through and around us. While not explicitly Buddhist, this concept resonates with the teachings on mindfulness and awareness. When we are present, truly attuned to the moment, we become more sensitive to these subtle energies. A person's unresolved anger, jealousy, or greed can manifest as a kind of negative energy that others sense. There's a story of a monk meditating in a forest. A stranger approached, filled with hostility and intent on disrupting the monk's peace. The monk, however, remained calm and radiated metta, or loving kindness, toward the stranger. Over time, the stranger's anger dissolved, replaced by curiosity and eventually admiration. The monk's inner strength and compassion had acted as a mirror, reflecting back the stranger's negativity and neutralizing its power. In our modern lives, we rarely meditate in forests, but we can practice mindfulness in our interactions. For example, if a colleague's presence leaves you feeling unsettled, pause and reflect. Are they projecting their struggles onto you? Or could it be your reaction to their energy? By cultivating mindfulness, you can observe without judgment and decide whether to engage, protect your energy, or simply step away. Our instincts are ancient, shaped by generations of survival. Trusting them is not paranoia but wisdom. If someone's presence consistently feels off, it's worth considering why. Perhaps they are carrying unresolved pain, or maybe their intentions do not align with kindness. Whatever the case, listening to your intuition allows you to navigate relationships with clarity and care. Path forward. What can we take from these reflections? First, recognize that toxicity often arises from suffering, both in the toxic individual and in those affected by them. Compassion, therefore, becomes our anchor. But compassion must be balanced with wisdom. The Buddhist teachings remind us that while we can wish for all beings to be free from suffering, we are not obligated to endure harm to help someone else. In dealing with toxic traits, practice the Eightfold Path, particularly right mindfulness, samasati, and right effort, samavayama. These principles guide us to observe situations with clarity and act in ways that promote peace rather than conflict. If someone delights in your pain, remember that their actions reflect their inner struggles. If someone seeks to control you, understand that their fear of impermanence drives their behavior. If someone's energy unsettles you, trust your instincts and respond with mindfulness. Each of these situations is an opportunity to practice self-awareness, compassion, and the wisdom to protect your well-being. Above all, know this: you are not alone in this journey. Each step you take toward understanding and responding to toxicity is a step toward greater freedom and peace. Like the lotus that rises from muddy waters, your growth comes not despite the challenges, but because of them. Trust in your ability to rise, trust in your light, and trust that by cultivating wisdom and compassion, you can navigate any storm with grace. Section 2. Emotional manipulation and the lack of empathy. Life is often a delicate web of relationships, and within this web, we encounter individuals whose actions leave us questioning our own perceptions, emotions, and worth. Emotional manipulation and a lack of empathy are particularly painful traits to confront, as they undermine trust and connection, the very foundation of human relationships. Yet, through the teachings of the Buddha, we find guidance to navigate these challenges with clarity and compassion. Let us explore these behaviors, their impact, and how ancient wisdom offers tools to face such difficulties in a modern context. The weight of responsibility is one we all carry, some more willingly than others. But have you ever known someone who seems to slip away from it like water through cupped hands? These individuals refuse to acknowledge their faults, instead placing blame elsewhere. Imagine a friend who consistently arrives late to every appointment. Rather than admitting their poor time management, they attribute their lateness to traffic, an unsent text, or even your failure to remind them. Over time, such excuses erode trust and create a one-sided dynamic. From a Buddhist perspective, evading responsibility arises from ignorance, one of the three poisons, kleshas, that keep us bound to suffering. Ignorance, in this case, refers to an unwillingness to see reality as it is, including one's own role in creating harm. The Buddha taught that only by acknowledging the truth can we begin to transform it. Denying responsibility prevents growth, both for the person evading it and for those around them who bear the weight of their denial. In reflecting on this behavior, I am reminded of a story from the Jataka tales, recounting the Buddha's past lives. In one life, he was a wise leader of a flock of geese. A hunter set a trap, ensnaring one of the geese. The Buddha, as their leader, could have flown away, leaving the trapped goose to its fate. Instead, he willingly landed and stayed with his companion, taking responsibility for guiding the flock into danger. His courage and accountability moved the hunter, who freed both geese. This story reminds us that true strength lies in owning our actions, even when it is difficult. In our daily lives, encountering someone who evades responsibility can be draining. They might manipulate situations to make you feel at fault, twisting your words or actions to suit their narrative. The key to addressing this lies in practicing mindfulness and detachment. Recognize their behavior for what it is, a reflection of their struggles, not your worth. By setting boundaries and communicating calmly, you can protect yourself while offering an example of accountability. Deception often walks hand in hand with irresponsibility, as those who evade accountability frequently resort to lying. Lies may be subtle, a small omission here, an exaggerated detail there, or they may be grand fabrications that unravel relationships. Have you ever trusted someone deeply, only to discover that their words were threads of untruths woven into an intricate web? Perhaps a friend promised to attend an important event, only for you to later learn they chose to spend the evening elsewhere. The sting of betrayal lingers long after the lie itself is exposed. The Buddha likened lying to a thief who steals not possessions but trust and peace of mind. Honesty is one of the precepts in the Eightfold Path, right speech, samavaka. This principle calls us to speak truthfully, avoiding words that deceive or harm. Lying disrupts not only external harmony but also internal balance, as it pulls the liar further from their authentic self. A powerful Buddhist parable illustrates the destructive nature of dishonesty. A wealthy merchant once entrusted a servant with a precious gem, instructing him to guard it carefully. The servant, tempted by greed, replaced the gem with a counterfeit, believing his deceit would remain undiscovered. When the merchant returned, he immediately recognized the forgery. The servant's lie not only cost him his position but also tarnished his character, leaving him burdened with guilt and mistrust. In modern terms, chronic lying might not always stem from greed but from insecurity or a desire for control. Consider a colleague who habitually exaggerates their contributions to projects. Their falsehoods may stem from fear of inadequacy, fear of being overlooked. Yet their lies create tension and resentment within the team, fracturing trust and collaboration. Dealing with chronic liars requires both wisdom and compassion. First, accept that their behavior reflects their inner struggles, not your value. Then, decide how to proceed. Is this a relationship worth preserving, or is it healthier to step back? When confrontation feels necessary, approach it with calm clarity. Instead of accusing, ask open-ended questions that encourage reflection. I noticed this didn't align with what you said earlier. Can we talk about that? This approach not only preserves your integrity but also plants seeds of self-awareness in the other person. What do we do when faced with manipulation and deception? The Buddha's teachings guide us to cultivate compassion not as an excuse for harmful behavior but as a means to rise above it. Recognizing the humanity in those who hurt us allows us to respond with wisdom rather than anger. This doesn't mean tolerating harm. Imagine a pond disturbed by a stone. If the water reacts with turbulence, it cannot reflect the sky. But if it settles, it becomes clear again. Similarly, when confronted with manipulation or lies, our initial reaction may be anger or hurt. By pausing and practicing mindfulness, we allow clarity to emerge, enabling us to respond with strength and grace. On a personal note, I once worked with someone whose constant dishonesty created a toxic environment. At first, I was consumed by frustration, wondering how they could so easily twist the truth. Over time, I began to see their behavior as a manifestation of deep fear of failure, fear of being unloved. While this understanding didn't excuse their actions, it softened my heart and allowed me to navigate the situation with more peace. Setting boundaries and focusing on my integrity became my tools for maintaining balance. In the face of manipulation and deceit, the teachings of impermanence, anicca, offer solace. All things, including relationships and challenges, are transient. A lie may hurt today, but its impact will fade with time, especially if we choose to focus on cultivating truth and kindness within ourselves. Similarly, someone's refusal to take responsibility may frustrate us now, but it is not a permanent state. People can change, and by embodying the values we wish to see, we may inspire them to follow suit. Ultimately, the Buddha's wisdom reminds us that our path is our own. We cannot control others' actions, but we can choose how we respond. By grounding ourselves in compassion and integrity, we navigate even the most challenging relationships with resilience. Let this be a reminder. No matter the harm others may inflict, your inner peace remains within your power to protect. In practicing truth, mindfulness, and loving kindness, you transform not only your own life but also the lives of those around you. Section 3. The Heart of Malicious Behavior. Life, in its intricate unfolding, often places us in situations that challenge our understanding of human nature. At times, we encounter individuals whose actions leave us questioning their motivations and our own responses. A lack of remorse and open cruelty are among the most painful traits to witness, for they strike at the core of trust and vulnerability in relationships. Through the lens of Buddhist philosophy, we can find solace and guidance in understanding these behaviors, and in learning how to navigate them with wisdom and compassion. When someone refuses to acknowledge the harm they've caused, it leaves a deep and lingering wound. Imagine a coworker who takes credit for your hard work. When confronted, they don't apologize or acknowledge your efforts, but instead justify their actions, suggesting that it was a team effort or that your contribution was minimal. Their denial of accountability isn't just frustrating. It erodes your sense of fairness and leaves you questioning your worth. From a Buddhist perspective, this absence of remorse stems from ignorance, avidya, a fundamental misunderstanding of interconnectedness and the impact of one's actions. The Buddha taught that everything we do ripples outward, affecting others in ways we may not immediately see. The law of karma reminds us that our actions, whether kind or harmful, return to us. A person who lacks remorse for their deeds is blind to this reality, perpetuating cycles of harm without realizing the consequences. In my own life, I once worked with someone who routinely manipulated situations to their advantage, often at the expense of others. When called out, they would deflect, placing blame elsewhere or dismissing concerns as trivial. Initially, I was consumed by anger, wondering how someone could act so carelessly. Over time, I realized that their inability to feel remorse wasn't about me. It was a reflection of their own disconnection from themselves and others. This realization didn't excuse their behavior, but it allowed me to let go of the resentment I carried, which had only been harming me. The Buddha's teachings encourage us to approach such individuals with compassion, not as a means of excusing their actions, but as a way of freeing ourselves from the cycle of anger and hurt. Compassion doesn't mean allowing someone to continue harming us. It means understanding that their behavior stems from suffering, even if they are unaware of it. Setting boundaries becomes an act of both self-respect and kindness, creating space for healing and growth. Cruelty is a more direct form of harm, often delivered with intention and precision. Words, when wielded cruelly, can cut deeper than any physical wound. Think of a friend who mocks your aspirations, belittling your dreams as unrealistic or foolish. or a partner who criticizes your appearance, subtly chipping away at your confidence under the guise of helpful comments. These actions are not random. They are calculated to diminish your sense of self. The Buddha likened words to arrows. Once released, they cannot be taken back, and their impact can be lasting. The practice of right speech, samavaka, one of the steps of the Noble Eightfold Path, calls us to speak in ways that are truthful, kind, and conducive to harmony. Cruelty, in contrast, arises from a mind clouded by anger, greed, or delusion. A person who resorts to cruelty seeks to elevate themselves by bringing others down, not realizing that true strength comes from lifting others up. I recall a story from the Buddhist scriptures about a monk who endured harsh insults from a villager. Rather than retaliating, the monk simply smiled and said, "You have given me these words, but I do not accept them. Therefore, they remain yours." This response reflects a profound understanding of self-control and detachment. Cruelty loses its power when we refuse to internalize it, choosing instead to remain grounded in our own worth. In the modern world, detaching from cruelty can feel difficult, especially when it comes from those we care about. The key lies in mindfulness, observing the situation without immediate reaction. By stepping back, we create space to respond with clarity rather than emotion. If a friend mocks your dreams, you might say, "I value your perspective, but my dreams are important to me." This assertion of self-worth, delivered calmly, is a powerful way to deflect cruelty without escalating conflict. Both the absence of remorse and the presence of cruelty challenge our ability to maintain compassion and equanimity. Yet, they also offer opportunities for growth. Through these experiences, we learn the importance of self-awareness and the strength that comes from remaining true to our values. The Buddhist teachings remind us that while we cannot control others' actions, we have the power to choose our responses. In moments of doubt or pain caused by others, it can be helpful to reflect on the impermanence of all things, anicca. Just as the sting of a harsh word fades with time, so too do the emotions it provokes. By anchoring ourselves in the present and practicing loving kindness, metta, we create a shield of inner peace that no external harm can penetrate. The heart of malicious behavior often stems from a place of deep suffering and disconnection. Recognizing this doesn't mean condoning it, but it allows us to respond with wisdom rather than reaction. By practicing compassion for ourselves and others, we transform these challenges into opportunities to deepen our understanding of the human condition and our own capacity for resilience. May we all find the strength to face cruelty with courage, to navigate the absence of remorse with clarity, and to cultivate the inner peace that allows us to rise above harm. In doing so, we honor the Buddha's teachings and create a world rooted in kindness and understanding. Section 4. External warnings and red flags. In the vast, intricate web of human connections, it is often those closest to us, our friends and family, who serve as our most reliable mirrors. They see us with a clarity we sometimes lack for ourselves, especially when emotions cloud our judgment. But how often do we heed their warnings when they gently, or sometimes urgently, caution us about someone in our lives? These external signals can be life-saving, yet they are often ignored in the haze of affection, optimism, or denial. It is natural to want to believe in the goodness of someone we care about. But what if our trust blinds us to red flags that others, standing at a safer distance, can see more clearly? The Buddha often emphasized the importance of wise friends, or kalyanamitta, in guiding us toward truth and enlightenment. Surrounding ourselves with those who genuinely care for our well-being can be the difference between thriving in a supportive environment and suffering in silence. I recall a story from the Jataka tales where the Bodhisattva, our Buddha in a previous life, was born as a wise and compassionate deer. In his forest lived another deer who often disregarded the warnings of his friends, believing he could navigate dangers alone. One day, ignoring the urgent cries of his companions, he ventured into a hunter's trap. Only the collective effort of his friends freed him. The tale reminds us that listening to the perspectives of those who care for us can save us from unnecessary harm. In modern life, these warnings might come as subtle observations. A close friend might mention how someone you trust tends to dominate conversations or subtly dismisses your feelings. A family member may notice patterns of manipulation or insincerity in someone you've grown close to. While it can be uncomfortable to hear these observations, especially when they challenge our perceptions, it is worth considering their intentions. Most loved ones warn us not to control but to protect, motivated by a desire for our happiness. Yet, the ego often resists such advice. We may feel defensive, interpreting their concern as judgment or intrusion. This resistance, however, stems from attachment, a concept deeply explored in Buddhist teachings. Attachment clouds discernment, making it difficult to see people and situations as they truly are. The Buddha taught that by practicing non-attachment, we can free ourselves from illusions and better navigate relationships. This doesn't mean abandoning love or trust, but approaching them with mindfulness and clarity. One of the clearest red flags is contempt. Unlike anger, which often burns hot and fades, contempt is a cold, calculated emotion that corrodes relationships over time. It manifests in small, cutting remarks, a disdainful tone, or dismissive body language. Imagine a partner who, when you share your aspirations, responds with a smirk and a comment like, "Why would you waste your time on that? You'll never succeed." Or a friend who subtly mocks your appearance, saying things like, "Are you sure that's the look you're going for?" These small acts of belittlement may seem insignificant at first, but their cumulative impact is profound. They erode self-esteem, making you question your worth and abilities. From a Buddhist perspective, contempt arises from ignorance and delusion, specifically, a false sense of superiority. The person wielding contempt may feel insecure or powerless, using put-downs to assert control or validate their own worth. While understanding this doesn't excuse their behavior, it allows us to respond with wisdom rather than internalizing their negativity. In the Sigalovada Sutta, the Buddha advises on the qualities of good friendships, emphasizing respect, support, and honesty. Relationships marked by contempt violate these principles, creating an environment of fear and self-doubt. To counteract this, practice self-compassion and seek out connections that uplift rather than diminish you. Remember, you are not obligated to remain in spaces where your worth is questioned or dismissed. Another warning sign, often overlooked but deeply telling, is cruelty toward animals. This behavior, though seemingly unrelated to human relationships, reveals a profound lack of empathy and respect for life. Imagine a neighbor who leaves their pet in harsh conditions without food or shelter, or someone who derives pleasure from causing harm to animals. Such actions reflect a broader disregard for the interconnectedness of all beings, a central tenet of Buddhist philosophy. The Buddha often spoke of metta, or loving kindness, not just for humans but for all sentient beings. He emphasized that true compassion extends beyond our immediate circle to include even the smallest and most vulnerable creatures. Cruelty to animals, then, is not just an act of harm but a rejection of this universal compassion. Studies have also shown that individuals who harm animals are more likely to exhibit abusive behaviors toward humans, making this a critical red flag in assessing someone's character. I once knew someone who seemed outwardly kind and charming but showed an alarming indifference to the suffering of animals. Over time, this lack of empathy began to surface in other areas of their life, manipulating friends, disregarding boundaries, and displaying a general insensitivity to others' needs. It became clear that their treatment of animals was not an isolated behavior but part of a larger pattern of disregard for life and connection. So, how do we navigate these red flags with wisdom and grace? First, cultivate mindfulness. Observe without judgment, allowing yourself to see people's actions for what they are rather than what you wish them to be. Second, trust your intuition. If something feels off, honor that feeling. It is often your subconscious picking up on subtle cues your conscious mind hasn't yet processed. Third, lean on the support of wise and loving friends. Their perspective can offer clarity in moments of doubt, grounding you in truth. Ultimately, the journey of recognizing and responding to red flags is not about fostering suspicion or fear. It is about aligning with the principles of compassion, respect, and truth. By honoring these values in ourselves and seeking them in others, we create a life rooted in peace and authenticity. May we all find the strength to listen, the clarity to discern, and the compassion to act wisely in the face of life's warnings. And may we remember that even amidst challenges, the path to peace is always within reach. Section 5. Personal Stories and Insights. There is a unique power in storytelling, a gentle thread that weaves together life's lessons, allowing us to connect across time and experience. Stories have a way of guiding us through challenges, offering comfort and clarity in the face of uncertainty. They remind us that our struggles are not ours alone, but part of a shared human journey. In this section, I want to share two stories that have stayed with me, one from the wisdom of my grandmother and another from my own professional life. These tales illuminate the importance of compassion, awareness, and resilience in navigating the complexities of human behavior. When I was a child, my grandmother often spoke of a neighbor who seemed, at first glance, to be a kind and respectable man. He had a way with words, charming everyone in the village with his wit and humor. But beneath this polished exterior lay a different reality. My grandmother noticed that he treated animals and plants with a shocking lack of care. His dog, though beautiful, was often left tied up without food or water for hours. His garden, though lush, was filled with plants that seemed neglected and wilting. One particularly harsh winter, the villagers banded together to help those in need. Supplies were scarce, and everyone shared what little they could spare. But this man, despite having more than enough for himself, hoarded his resources. When a struggling family approached him for help, he offered none. My grandmother later told me, "How someone treats the defenseless, animals, plants, or those in need, shows you their true nature, no matter how charming they appear." This lesson resonates deeply with Buddhist teachings, particularly the practice of metta, or loving kindness. Compassion isn't just about grand gestures. It's reflected in the small, often unnoticed acts of care we show to the vulnerable. The Buddha often emphasized the interconnectedness of all beings, reminding us that cruelty toward one affects the whole. Observing this neighbor's behavior helped me understand that true kindness is not in words but in consistent, compassionate action. Reflecting on this story now, I see its relevance in our modern lives. In a world filled with polished social media profiles and curated personas, it's easy to be taken in by appearances. But if we pay attention to how someone treats those who cannot offer anything in return, whether it's a stray animal, a struggling colleague, or a stranger in need, we gain a clearer view of their character. This awareness, however, is not meant to foster judgment but to cultivate discernment, helping us navigate relationships with wisdom and care. Years later, this lesson resurfaced in a professional setting. At a job I held early in my career, there was a colleague who seemed, at first, to be the glue that held the team together. She was charismatic, always quick with a joke, and seemed to know everything about everyone. At first, her presence felt reassuring, a sign that the workplace was vibrant and connected. But over time, a darker pattern emerged. She had a habit of sharing concerns about others, framing her gossip as helpful insights. She created divisions among team members, planting seeds of doubt and mistrust. Meetings that should have been collaborative became tense, with lingering suspicions hanging in the air. At first, I couldn't reconcile her charm with the growing discord. It was only when her lies began to unravel, exposing her manipulation, that the team saw her for who she truly was. What struck me most during this experience was how easily one person's actions could disrupt an entire group. The Buddha taught that words have immense power. They can heal or harm, unite or divide. This colleague's misuse of words was a stark reminder of the importance of right speech, samavaka, one of the steps on the Noble Eightfold Path. Words should be truthful, kind, and spoken with the intent to bring harmony, not chaos. The team eventually found its way back to trust and transparency, but it wasn't easy. We had to address the divisions head-on, openly discussing the harm caused and committing to more honest communication. It was a challenging but ultimately liberating process. I learned that standing firm in the face of manipulation requires courage, but it also fosters resilience and clarity. Looking back, I see parallels between this experience and the Buddha's teachings on impermanence, anicca. Just as no storm lasts forever, no conflict is permanent. The tensions within the team, though painful at the time, passed, leaving behind valuable lessons. When we encounter similar challenges, it helps to remember that all situations, good or bad, are transient. This understanding allows us to approach difficulties with patience and hope. Both of these stories share a common thread: the importance of awareness and compassion in navigating relationships. Whether observing how someone treats the vulnerable or confronting manipulation in a professional setting, the key lies in staying true to our values. The Buddhist teachings remind us that while we cannot control others' actions, we can control how we respond. By practicing mindfulness, compassion, and integrity, we create a foundation of inner peace that no external chaos can shake. As you reflect on these stories, consider the relationships in your own life. Are there people whose actions don't align with their words? Are there situations where you felt uneasy but couldn't quite pinpoint why? Trust your instincts, observe with clarity, and remember that the path to wisdom is paved with both challenges and insights. May these stories offer guidance as you navigate your own journey, reminding you that even in the face of difficulty, the seeds of growth and understanding are always within reach. Section 6. Practical lessons for protecting yourself. In the midst of life's complexities, the art of protecting oneself becomes an essential practice, not as a means of isolating ourselves from others, but as a way to nurture the peace and resilience needed to navigate relationships and challenges. The Buddhist teachings offer timeless guidance on cultivating inner strength, wisdom, and compassion to protect ourselves without compromising our humanity. Let us explore these practical lessons, weaving them into the fabric of modern life. Have you ever felt a quiet discomfort in someone's presence, even when nothing overtly harmful was happening? Perhaps it was the way they spoke, their tone, or even the subtle energy they carried. These moments often awaken a sense of unease, a gut feeling that something isn't right. The Buddhist teachings emphasize mindfulness, being fully present and attuned to our experiences. Our instincts are like ripples on the surface of a calm lake, signaling disturbances below. Trusting these instincts is not about suspicion but about honoring our inner wisdom. In the Dhammapada, the Buddha teaches that the wise perceive danger even in safety. This isn't a call to paranoia but a reminder to remain vigilant and mindful. For example, if you find yourself feeling drained or anxious after interacting with someone, it may be worth exploring why. Is it their words, actions, or something subtler? In modern life, intuition often competes with overanalysis. But by practicing mindfulness, we can reconnect with this natural wisdom and make choices that align with our well-being. Boundaries are a reflection of self-respect, yet they are one of the most challenging aspects of relationships. Toxic individuals often test or blur boundaries, seeking to control or manipulate. The Buddha's teaching of right effort, samavayama, in the Noble Eightfold Path encourages us to cultivate wholesome states and abandon unwholesome ones. Setting boundaries is an act of right effort, protecting our mental and emotional space from harm. I recall a time when a close friend repeatedly leaned on me for emotional support, often disregarding my own struggles. While I valued the friendship, I began to feel overwhelmed and drained. It took great courage to have a conversation about my limits, but the result was transformative. Boundaries don't push people away. They create a space where relationships can thrive in mutual respect and understanding. If you're navigating relationships with individuals who challenge your boundaries, start small. Communicate your needs clearly and calmly. For instance, if someone frequently interrupts your personal time, say, "I value our conversations, but I also need time to recharge. Can we set a time that works for both of us?" These simple yet firm assertions honor both yourself and the other person. Human connections are like sunlight to a growing plant. They nourish and sustain us. The Buddha often spoke of the importance of Kalyanamitta, or spiritual friends, who guide and uplift us on the path to wisdom. In today's world, surrounding ourselves with supportive relationships is more important than ever. Toxic relationships can cloud our minds and drain our energy, while positive ones offer clarity and strength. Think of a time when you felt truly supported by someone. A friend who listened without judgment, a mentor who encouraged your growth, or a family member who stood by you in difficult times. These relationships remind us of the goodness in the world and our capacity to give and receive love. Seek out these connections, and nurture them with intention. Just as a gardener tends to a flourishing plant, we must invest time and care into relationships that sustain us. In contrast, relationships that perpetuate harm or imbalance often serve as mirrors, reflecting areas where we need growth. While it's painful to let go of toxic connections, doing so can make space for healthier, more fulfilling bonds. As the Buddha taught, letting go of attachments that cause suffering is the key to liberation. Self-awareness is the cornerstone of transformation. Without it, we repeat patterns, blinded by habits and emotions. The Buddha's teaching on vipassana, or insight meditation, encourages us to observe our thoughts, feelings, and actions with clarity. By cultivating self-awareness, we can identify manipulation, recognize our triggers, and respond to challenges with wisdom rather than reaction. I once worked with someone whose constant criticism left me questioning my abilities. At first, I internalized their words, feeling inadequate and frustrated. But through reflection, I realized their behavior stemmed from their own insecurities, not my shortcomings. This awareness allowed me to detach from their negativity and regain my confidence. If you're struggling to understand your interactions with someone, take time to reflect. Journaling can be a powerful tool for uncovering patterns and gaining perspective. Ask yourself, how do I feel after spending time with this person? What triggers my emotions in our interactions? What can I do to protect my peace? These questions open the door to greater understanding and empowerment. Sometimes, despite our best efforts, certain situations or individuals deeply affect us, leaving us feeling stuck or overwhelmed. In these moments, seeking professional guidance can be a profound act of self-compassion. A counselor, therapist, or trusted spiritual teacher can provide the tools and perspective needed to navigate complex emotions and relationships. The Buddha's teachings remind us that seeking help is not a sign of weakness but of strength. Just as the Sangha, a community of practitioners, supports one another on the path to enlightenment, so too can we lean on others when the weight of life feels heavy. Professional guidance can offer insights and strategies that help us reclaim our emotional and mental balance, allowing us to move forward with clarity and purpose. Protecting oneself is not about building walls or shutting others out. It's about creating a foundation of strength and peace from which we can engage with the world authentically and compassionately. Trust your instincts, set boundaries, surround yourself with love, cultivate awareness, and seek help when needed. These practices, rooted in the Buddha's wisdom, offer a path to resilience and joy in the face of life's challenges. In moments of doubt, remember this: your peace is sacred, and protecting it is an act of love, for yourself and for those who walk this journey with you. By embracing these lessons, you not only safeguard your well-being, but also inspire others to do the same. May your path be one of strength, clarity, and boundless compassion. As we conclude, I want you to take a moment to breathe and reflect on the relationships in your life. Are there individuals who uplift you, inspire you, and walk alongside you in harmony? Or are there connections that drain your energy, leaving you feeling less than your true self? I'll share a personal memory. Years ago, I trusted someone whose charm masked a pattern of manipulation. It wasn't easy to see at first, but as I became more aware, the patterns emerged. While it was painful to step away, it was also liberating. I learned that protecting your peace sometimes means walking alone for a while to rediscover your strength. Remember, recognizing malicious intent isn't about judgment. It's about self-preservation and compassion. Compassion for yourself to create space for love and growth, and compassion for others to understand their behaviors without enabling harm. Parting thought. As you go about your day, ponder this: what boundaries can you create today to protect your peace tomorrow? Share your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to hear your insights. If you found value in today's discussion, please like this video, subscribe to Lotus Light Teachings, and share this message with someone who might need it. Together, we can light up the world one lesson at a time. Until next time, remember, you are worthy of love, respect, and serenity.